On this episode of the podcast, it's been a few days since Draymond Green's controversial comments on the Pat Bev podcast with Roan. We'll dive into that and work out what it might mean for the Warriors heading into next season. Yes, welcome back to the Golden State with Mates podcast. A little bit of a later one this week. It's Monday morning here in Australia, so it's technically the start of next week, but it will be published by Sunday night in America. Been a busy couple of days, couple of family things going on, and also went and watched Oppenheimer at the movies yesterday, which I'd been really looking forward to going and seeing, and we went at like 12:30 in the afternoon, so it was kind of the middle of the day, and for a movie that's quite long, goes for 3 hours, it almost took up the whole day kind of thing, but certainly well worth it. Much more keener to go and see that than I was to go and see Barbie, that is for sure, which I haven't gone and seen yet. I'm not sure if I'll dive into that at all, but we'll wait and see. But yeah, Oppenheimer was excellent, and I'm minored in history at university or college for those in America. So I'm really big on historical events such as World War II, particularly, and the Manhattan Project was obviously at the core of that. And yeah, it was excellent. It took a lot. I wouldn't say I'm the most politically minded person there is, but I would say that I probably know more about historical political events than I do about current political events. So I did have a good enough grasp of communism and the whole political situation that was going on at the time in the 1940s, obviously, and then into the 1950s with the Cold War and everything. So I did understand that. I do see how, and I'm not trying to talk down on anyone here, but it is legitimately a little bit complicated in terms of if you don't go into the movie with any background information on what it was actually about. And as I said, the political situation at the time, I do think that you would be leaving the movie with a lot of question marks on, okay, what the hell was going on, basically. Because really, the Manhattan Project, this is an Oppenheimer documentary kind of thing. This is not a Manhattan Project building the atomic bomb documentary. Now, yes, that is the biggest part of it. There's no doubt about that. But it's there's a lot of layers to this, and that was just one of them. And so, yeah, not to talk down on anyone, but if you are not a politically minded person, if you do not know much about the historical events of that time going into seeing the movie, then there is going to be a lot of scenes or a lot of part of the movie where you're just like, I have no fucking idea what's happening here. And you're going to leave. And maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that is a good thing for legitimately mankind and everyone across the world, is that if the people that don't know what happened then go and watch this movie and leave the movie thinking, I want to know more about that, then that's good, because someone even said it to me the other day, knowledge is wealth. And the more knowledge we have, the better. And particularly around things that happened at that time. So I think that's a good thing if people that don't really know what it was about go and watch it and then ask more questions about it and want to know more about what was actually happening at that point in the world, because it's certainly one of the biggest things to happen in this world ever, let alone in the last 100 years. So certainly worth a watch for anyone. I was, as I said, certainly keen to see it because I am quite big on historical events and stuff like that. So yeah, it was excellent. Certainly opened my eyes to a lot of new things, and certainly well worth the watch for anyone. But we'll jump back into basketball here, and of course the Warriors. Now, I wanted to just talk on this episode about Draymond Green, because he obviously had the podcast episode with Patrick Beverley a few days ago. Now it was released, and it started with kind of the trailer for it, or the hint for it on middle of the week, Wednesday or Thursday, whatever it was, about his comments on Jordan Poole, and he's basically saying that it wasn't an instant reaction, the punch I'm talking about here. The punch in training camp last year wasn't an instant reaction, and it was a build-up, and I don't think anyone is completely surprised by that. We know that the kind of different egos working within the Golden State system there, with Draymond and with Poole being the young guy coming up looking to make his way and really trying to follow the footsteps that Dray has led. There was clearly going to be some clashes going on. There were clearly some clashes going on well before that punch. Now, Was it manifesting in an on-court sense like it did last season? Absolutely not. Like, they won the championship the year prior. Everything on the court was rosy and whatnot. But, like, you look back at their time in Japan and when there was that three-point shooting contest, and I'm paraphrasing here, but Klay Thompson and Steph Curry won, I think, or whatever. And Klay said afterwards, it was good to Jordan pull down a rung kind of thing and shut him up a little bit, which, looking back at it, the Green punch was like a week or so later. That was kind of a big hint there. It's kind of what was going on behind the scenes. And of course, as fans and as the media, all we saw was the punch itself, which still to this day, we don't know who released that footage. And I don't know if the franchise owes anyone, or owes the public to make that available, I guess, in terms of, can we get some more clarification about what happened in that whole process in terms of how it actually got leaked and who did it and whatever else. There's a lot of question marks still about this, which will probably go on for years and years. I do think at some point, probably after everyone's retired, after Steve Kerr's no longer coach of the Warriors, whatever it is, I do think that we'll find out what happened there. But certainly it's going to leave some questions open for quite a while until that point. The whole pool stuff with Draymond is just silly, in my opinion. I don't actually think it's too bad for the entire team dynamic, because this is the thing with Draymond, is I actually like Dray's prerogative comments that he has, especially during these points of the year, during the off-season. One for me, and I was having a conversation with someone the other day, and I said, well, for me personally, as a writer, it's giving me content at the very least. And I should probably thank Dray for that, to be totally honest. So there's that, for starters. But I also think, if I put my Warrior fan hat on, I don't actually think that it is a negative thing for the Warriors when Draymond has prerogative comments towards others outside the organization. It's got nothing to do with the team. So, the Andrew Nicholson stuff, I find funny. I find genuinely funny. And I also understand that for Draymond, he was taken 35th pick in the draft. He's got some serious beef with players ahead of him in that draft because he felt disrespected. He was taken that low. And you know what's happened? He's used that as motivation to build a Hall of Fame career, to win 4 NBA championships, to be a 4-time All-Star, to be a Defensive Player of the Year. Probably should have won 2 or 3 at the minimum. One of probably the best defender of this generation, one of the best defenders of all time. He used it as motivation. So when he comes out and has these comments about Andrew Nicholson or whoever else it may be, I understand, well, this is actually, he's using this as motivation. And I do think there's a part of it here that Draymond comes out and just speaks his mind because he thinks, well, if I speak my mind and if I talk a little bit of shit off the court, well, I'm going to use that as motivation because I know I've got to keep backing it up on the court. And so from a Warrior perspective, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. The Jordan Poole incident in training camp last year was bad, right? It was really bad. It had very little positive effects on the overall team. For Draymond specifically, I actually think that if that whole thing didn't happen, Draymond might have been worse last season. Draymond was arguably, I think, the Golden State's second most important player last season behind Steph. He had a really good season. A really good season. And you know why? And what a big part of it was? One, it was kind of a contract year. I know he had obviously the option for next season, but all along we know that he wanted to opt out and get longer term security, which he ultimately did. And as I said, he did that because he put the work in. He knew that he had to earn back the respect of his teammates, the coaches, everyone, earn back the respect of the NBA world on the floor after what everyone had just seen him do to one of his younger teammates in training camp. That was a motivation. That incident. Now, it was terrible. It was shocking. He should definitely not do it ever again in any circumstances. However, it was actually a source of motivation, I believe, in him playing better last season. So, we've got to understand that a lot of what Dray says, a lot of what Dray does comes from that perspective in terms of this guy is actually going to be better on the floor as a result of what he said off the floor or whatever else it may be. The Nicholson stuff is no issue. The Poole stuff is just a little bit silly to me. It's not, I don't think, necessarily harming the team dynamic now as it sits because Poole's obviously off the team. I do think it's painting Draymond in a bad light. And if he's looking out just after his own reputation, then those comments tarnished his own reputation. And we know he's got a pretty controversial reputation as it is. And I'm sure everyone who's been in any kind of long-term relationship before, if you are in a relationship and you go your separate ways or whatever, if one person just moves on with their life, doesn't say really anything about it, is just, quiet, goes off, does their own business, that's that, end of story. And then you have the other person going to their mates, going to whoever will listen and just talking shit about the other person. The whole relationship, the whole breakup, it's their fault, they did this, they did that, whatever else. I can guarantee you, and I'm sure everyone can guarantee, that the person who's talking shit and the person who continues to want to talk about it is the person that looks bad compared to the person who is just done with it and wants to move on. And clearly, in this situation, Jordan Poole is that person. He's been asked multiple times about the Draymond, and he's we're in Washington now. I'm with Kuz. Let's move on. And that's painting him in a much better light than Draymond, who just wants to rehash the whole incident again and wants to say, oh, well, no, it wasn't an instant reaction. I wouldn't just hit a teammate off the cuff like that without, any prior incidents happening. And when I say incidents, clearly trash talking back and forth, whatever else. So that's the only thing for me is Draymond's kind of hurting his reputation here. And I just think it's silly and he just needs to move on. I get it's off-season fodder and off-season content and it's making Draymond relevant. The actual worry I have here, and I said this to someone the other day, is that what happens when Draymond retires? Because he clearly wants some attention. There's no doubt about that. And again, he uses that attention as motivation on the floor. But what happens when the on-the-floor stuff isn't happening anymore? Is he still going to want that attention to the same degree? And it's kind of ironic because they're two of the best defensive players of all time. But I'm looking at Scottie Pippen now, and I'm just so sad about the whole Scottie Pippen-Michael Jordan relationship and how Scottie has been talking badly about MJ over the past couple of years, particularly after The Last Dance came out. And I hope we don't get to a situation like that where Draymond almost needs the attention on him to a point where he's almost willing to say anything, and that if he starts pulling Steph and Clay into arguments like this. Now, I'm completely hypothesizing here. I'm not saying he's going to do that. I think the relationship between Steph, Clay, and Dray is forever. They have got a bond forever, and I don't think that's going anywhere. However, you probably would have also said the same thing about Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen, in the mid-90s, right? Where we are now with that relationship, we would have never pictured back then. Now, I wasn't alive. Well, 97, I was alive. But that's kind of what and I just don't want to get to a point where Dray wants the attention so much that he's kind of willing to say anything just for the sake of being controversial. That's all I'm saying. The more thing I'm worried about is the Chris Paul comments and then the subsequent reports after that. So this is what he said, Draymond, in the podcast. He said, "I've publicly said I didn't like Chris Paul before. I'm just not going to be oh man, that changed now, he my teammate. No, I look forward to talking amongst men. I've had my fair share of days not working with adults and people who don't move like adults, so I'm looking forward to going to work with an adult." So, interesting. He kind of has a crack at him to begin with and says, well, I'm not going to say that I don't dislike you anymore just because you're my teammate. But then he also comes around and is oh, no, I'm actually looking forward to working with you because you're an adult, though. So that's a bit odd. Now, I'm not saying that Dray's fine. I'm not saying he has to love Chris Paul or even like Chris Paul. He can still dislike Chris Paul if he wants. I just would rather you not say that publicly. You don't have to say publicly that you love the guy or whatever. But I don't know why you have to reiterate that. Hang on, I still don't like the guy, even though he's my teammate. I just don't know why you had to reiterate that point. It doesn't help things, that's for sure. When you got a new player coming in, when there's already some speculation about what role he's going to come into fit to begin with. There's already speculation on how you're going to fit with that player as Draymond Green. It's not helping the situation. It's not helping the team dynamic going into next season. Now, I'm sure they've spoken privately and it's all fine, but it's not helping. It's not helping. The bigger thing, and I wrote about this, and look, I want to retain my writing integrity, right? Like, I wrote an article, and the headline was Draymond Green's recent comments threatened to destabilize the Golden State Warriors again, or something along those lines. The destabilize was, I guess, the key word there. My thing there is I'm not trying to get an attention-grabbing headline. I think a lot of people, like, we got a lot of comments on social media and stuff stating that, that was an attention-grabbing headline, really. And me, personally, as writing that, was just trying to make a mountain out of a molehill kind of thing. I want to retain some writing integrity. I don't want to go for an attention-grabbing headline. Like, I'm legitimately writing my opinion here. This is what I'm thinking. And I saw that quote, and I thought, if you're a younger player, if you're Jonathan Kuminga and Moses Moody in particular, because they're the guys that will have the most impact for the Warriors next season, but even like Trace Jackson-Davis and Brandon Pajemski, Lester Quinones, these guys who we've spoken about at length over recent weeks because of their summer league and whatever else. Like, how do you think, as those guys are reading those comments, saying, I've had my fair share of days not working with adults and people who don't move like adults, so I'm looking forward to going to work with an adult? Because I know that if I was in a workplace, even now, like legitimately now in a workplace, and I am 26, if someone said that about another colleague and then said, I've had my fair share of days not working with adults and people who don't move like adults, and I was still there, I'd be like, am I an adult? Like, is he referring to me not being an adult? How's our relationship going? I would just question everything. Now, Moses Moody, Jonathan Kuminga, the other young guys, they've probably got enough maturity behind them that they might not necessarily question that as much as I and some others would. But that was my instant reaction. My instant thought was not that, this is a huge issue between Draymond and Chris Paul, although, as I said, I don't think it helps. My bigger issue is, what do the young guys think of a comment like that? And how can the young guys and the aging core work together next season to build the Warriors back to championship contenders? And then, so I write that article. A lot of people think it's, as I said, making a mountain out of a molehill. It's, an attention-grabbing headline, whatever else. Like, that's fine. If you want to think that, I personally, as I said, I want to retain some integrity here. I'm not going to write shit for the sake of writing shit. Like, that is legitimately what I felt when I read and heard those quotes from Draymond. But less than 24 hours later, Monty Poole of NBC Sports is on 95.7 The Game, Steiny and Guru, and reports that there's no relationship between Draymond Green and Jonathan Kuminga. Or not a good relationship, whatever it is. I think he said, no, there's no relationship, and that it's up to Draymond to fix that. And obviously, the punch last season not only impacted Dray's relationship with Jordan Poole, but it clearly affected Dray's relationship with everyone in the franchise, really. And it must have, particularly the young players, because again, I put myself in that position, and if I was a teammate, if I was a Kuminga or a Moody in that situation, watching that, I'm like, what's stopping him doing that to me? And does that mean I have to be careful of what I say because it could come back and lead to that? Even if I am not the outspoken person that Jordan Poole is, and that's the thing is once someone in their work environment can't be who they want to be, kind of thing, then that's not going to lead to great productivity in terms of what they're there to do. And in this case, it's there to play NBA basketball and develop themselves to the best player they can be for the good of the team. So that's the most concerning aspect for me, is that the Draymond Kuminga thing, because Kuminga, now with Poole gone, is easily the most talented Warrior young player. Now, maybe Moses Moody plays more than Jonathan Kuminga next season, and that would probably be a disappointing thing, because I think Kuminga's at a point here where he's a bull at a gate right now. Like, he's ready to explode. Give me the playing time. I'm here. I'm ready to arrive. And he's just waiting for that opportunity. And Draymond is big in that because it's not just about the relationship he has with Kuminga. It's about how that feeds in to the team overall. Because there's clearly, now, while the Warriors have delved more into their championship agent core this offseason by trading Jordan Poole for Chris Paul, there is still a big need for Jonathan Kuminga and Moses Moody to be really valuable players next season. And you cannot go into a season with the same kind of disconnect that the young players had with the older players last season after the whole Poole Green incident. And so that starts with Kuminga and Green, because there you've got a player who has always been seen as the emotional leader of this team, and then the most talented young player in Kuminga. And it's going to be really interesting to see, because you're also got this whole dynamic with their positions within the team, within the rotation. Because if the Warriors want Jonathan Kuminga to be the player he can be, and he wants to become the player he can be, he will become a starting caliber player in this league. And so when that happens, and I'm not saying it's going to be next season, but we could be looking at it maybe ahead of the following season, like Kuminga's fourth year, might even happen midway through next season, like who knows. But when that time comes, if it does come, how is Draymond going to react to that? Because to me, he's the clear one that would be in the firing line to move back to the bench in that scenario. Now, could you take Loon out and have JK and Dray play up front in the front court together? Maybe. But I think the Warriors still need a genuine starting center across the course of an 82-game regular season. And so to me, that's a clear Draymond out, JK in. Now, again, whether we get to that point is a different question altogether. But whether we do or not is probably determined by how their relationship fosters in the short term, now, into training camp, into next season, and therefore will determine how Dray responds if that time does come. Which, let's be honest, there's a genuine possibility. If it's not Kuminga, it's going to be at some point Draymond is no longer going to be it's not going to be best for Draymond to be the starting power forward of the Golden State Warriors. And it's going to be Kuminga, or it's going to be someone else in order to take this team forward to the next level, to the next phase, wherever that may take them. And so, as I said, that's why this whole Green-Kuminga relationship is really important, because it's an encapsulation of the whole young v old kind of disconnection that there is at the Warriors at the moment. And it's a pretense of what could happen down the line with Green and Kuminga in the starting power forward spot of the Warriors. And so that's why when I say that, Green's comments could destabilize the Warriors again, like this is why I'm saying that. And that's why I'm saying that this isn't me going completely overboard and making something out of nothing. This is what I'm legitimately thinking right now and then projecting forward into the future. It would be remiss of me not to mention Lester Quinones on this episode, because this is the first one we've done since he officially signed a two-way deal with the Warriors. There's a lot of people on social media who were kind of like, it's a two-way spot, it's another guard, who the hell cares? And I get that point of view, I really do. However, I do think it doesn't change the fact that I do think it's a massive steal, that this guy is an NBA talent and that his form in Summer League proved that he was clearly above that level. His form to end the G League season last year was clearly well above that level, one most improved. And so if you go around like every NBA roster right now, I could probably find one player at least from each team who Lester Quinones deserves to be on an NBA contract over. Like for the Warriors, it's who's going to have more impact next season, Lester Quinones or Brandon Pajemski? It's Quinones. Trace Jackson Davis or Quinones. It's Quinones. It just, like, it is. Now, I know that's not how things work. Like, Pajemski's a 19th overall pick. That's, of course, he's going to be on the main roster. Like, I get that's how things work. But if we're talking about just specific impact for next season, there's a chance here that Quinones can play a little bit because, as I've spoken about before, like the Warrior guards, Steph Curry, Chris Paul, Klay Thompson, hell, even Corey Joseph, they're all veterans. They're all well into their 30s. And they are, during a long, arduous regular season, going to need a lot of rest. And so I think it's a really big win for both parties. The Warriors, the fact they can retain Quinones on a two-way deal. And for him as well, like he's at an organisation, yes, they're trying to win a championship. They're not in a rebuilding mode. But it's almost better for him that he's in this situation where he may have more access to opportunity than if he was at a young team with a lot of young talent who were kind of all fighting for minutes and you're not really sure your place in the pecking order. Like, Quinones knows his place in the pecking order now, like, and it's down the list. There's no doubt, like, he's a two-way contract guy. But with the players above him, there is some opportunity here. And once you get an opportunity, if you can take that, then who knows where it may lead. I'm really interested to see, like, he's never played on an NBA, he's barely played on an NBA floor as it is. But he's never played with like any of the stars. He hasn't played with Steph. He hasn't played with Klay. He hasn't played with Wiggs. He hasn't played with Dray. He hasn't played with Loon. I'm fascinated because I do think this guy's really talented. I think he can have a decent NBA career, and I'm interested to see how that may pan out over the course of the short term, particularly if he does get an opportunity. And it's potentially, I do say most of his opportunity might come with those veteran guys out, but if he can play alongside them, because I think that's something that Poole did really well. He was actually, we saw it. He was far better playing alongside the veterans than he was, running the second year. That's part of the reason he got traded almost. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see and exciting to see how Lester Quinones can develop his career next season and moving forward. We'll finish up there, a little Oppenheimer review, bit of chat about Dray, obviously, and Quinones. It's well and truly into the off-season now. I woke up this morning and I had one tweet, I think, from Woj. I've got Woj and Shams and all the other main reporters on tweet notifications. And usually, free agency, that draft, that time of the year, a month ago, I was getting 30-plus tweet notifications a day. And then I wake up this morning and there's one. So it just goes to show you we're kind of in the doldrums of the NBA off-season. And there's still a couple of months of it to come. In saying that, I might push back to maybe 2 episodes a week. Obviously, if there's some big Warriors news or something, then I'll be straight onto it and give my thoughts on here. But for now, I might push it back to 2. Certainly looking forward to getting more guests on, obviously, over the course of the off season. And want to hear your guys' thoughts and opinions. So you can tweet me or whatever at POC252 there or on Threads. Our YouTube channel, Golden State with Mates. You subscribe there and you can leave some comments. That would be greatly appreciated. Want to interact with people as much as possible. Other than that, guys, hope you have a great week ahead and I'll catch you on the next episode.